says you're God.
Oh, does she? There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of council to order. Our clerk today will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. In light of the agenda, I'd ask for a procedural motion to proceed in camera. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Manley. All those in favor? Any opposed? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 17th regular meeting of council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. Question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. No one is joining us electronically tonight, and the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Agenda item 8A, Old City Quarter Neighborhood Association. We're adding the PowerPoint presentation and report titled Old City Quarter Association Area Report to the addendum this evening.
Thank you very much. Motion for the adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Mayor's report tonight. I have a few things to talk about. I'll try and be as quick as I can. Good news story that the Aquafit classes will continue at Nanaimo Pools until June. This modified schedule will include the following 2 models for therapy aquafit, shallow water aquafit, and deep water aquafit. Whiteboard workouts. No instructor, unfortunately, is available at this time, but a workout will be provided on a whiteboard for patrons to follow. All equipment and pool space will be available during the scheduled times. In terms of instructor-led workouts, due to ongoing staff shortages and increased demand, the city was originally planning to pause these classes while additional staff were hired and trained. However, with this modified schedule, classes will continue to run this spring, April to June, before the pools shut down for their annual maintenance. We are continuing to try and actively recruit lifeguards in a number of ways. The Department of Parks, Recreation and Culture will be holding a job fair and held a job fair on Thursday, April the 13th, 2 to 7 at the Nanaimo Aquatic Centre. I want to remind the public, because some have written emails to Mayor and Council and staff and spoken to staff in ways that are frankly not appropriate for the treatment of public servants, that the city is not doing this deliberately. We are challenged, as is every other Parks and Recreation program, certainly in this province, trying to find appropriate staff who are trained. We have to meet safety, public safety regulations to ensure the safety of those who use our pools. The new temporary public art has been selected. The first is Compelling Agency by David Martinello. He's a Vancouver Island-based artist. His proposal, Compelling Agency, draws attention to the connective value that humans have to wood as a resource, fairly important given the history of this province and this island. It's the artist's intention with his artwork to have the viewer thoroughly evaluate their relationship to wood and in turn their relationship to their environment. The second is Moonsnail House by Amber Morrison and Matthew Fox. Artist and educator Amber Morrison and 3D artist Matthew Fox are based out of Nanaimo. They'll captivate passerbys with this interactive work, Moonsnail House, and the design of the structure will invite admirers to explore this visually appealing, large, interactive sculpture. Additional signage will provide information about the Lewis's moonsnail and the intertidal zones of the Sailor Sea. Finally, the city is invited on the topics that I'm discussing today to participate in the monthly Art Agora activities. Art Agora was conceived and created by media artist and designer Tanusha Mishra during the pandemic to bring together residents of Nanaimo through shared online creativity. Through a series of monthly activations, residents are invited to participate in a variety of creative projects. Last month, the program was launched with the activity Nan Emo. Residents, including myself, submitted handwritten notes about what living in Nanaimo really meant to them. A panel of jurors, including our distinguished poet laureate, Kamal Pamar, selected winners, and all the entries can be viewed on the city website. This month's activity is Culinary Delights, asking residents what they would make if they were cooking for a stranger, a neighbor, or a favorite person, and to share the dish through photos and handwritten recipes. Art Agora's monthly self-guided activities are offered until the end of August, and a list of themes and activities can be found on the city website. On some happy news and compliments to staff, I know Mr. Harding's present in the building, but Mr. Harding was able to attend at Fresno State College of Health and Human Services Division as an active advisor, if you will. He was, and I'm just going to read a portion of the letter that came from the chair and professor of that department. On behalf of our faculty and student majors in Recreation Administration, we want to thank you for allowing Mr. Richard Harding to spend time on our campus. We were fortunate to have Richard visit our campus during the week of March 20th as our professional in residence. The program brings together accomplished professionals to campus and to work and network with our faculty members. He, in addition, concludes asking that he wants to get further information from Richard that will assist in how they operate down there. It's a very positive bit of news. And I know Mr. Lindsay's in the building as well. A letter's been sent to me as mayor advising that on behalf of the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators and our current CAO, Mr. Rudolph, finished his term as president last year, is happy to acknowledge the commitment of our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer and General Manager of Development Services, Dale Lindsay. He's now spent 10 years in municipal service in a management capacity, and his recognition pin has been sent to him. They're asking us to recognize Dale, perhaps making a special presentation of its City Council for his ongoing support of the municipal profession and for the part that he continues to play in helping make CAMA the leading organization in fostering and sustaining municipal excellence. You know, and the only guy who's actually here tonight to receive the final accolade, who's come out of the back room and is sitting there patiently and quietly, is someone who just happens to enjoy the most prestigious position the city can award, is that a CEO. It's happy birthday to Jake Rudolph today. On that happy note, we have nothing to rise and report on from the in-camera meeting. The first item then of substance really is the presentations, and it's the Old City Quarter Neighborhood Association. Matthew Rosenthal and Monica Briggs are going to present council with a report regarding city projects that require attention in the Old City Quarter area. As they say in the game show, come on down, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Welcome. Councillors. So, get started here. Who we are, the Old City Quarter Association has been the Merchants Association for the Old City Quarter neighborhood for over 25 years, represent the vibrant business community in the area. We have an annually elected board, business and property owners. We're actually up to 63 paid members. We've had a solid week on recruitment. The primary goals of the organization are to develop the area as a destination for shopping, dining, the arts, and a place to do business. We advocate on behalf of area businesses, put on events, marketing, and we're funded through a levy on commercial properties and a nominal amount for membership fees. I've been president of the group since 2019. I've been a director since 2016. I'm also a principal co-founder of Cascare Consulting Engineers Limited, civil consulting business. So why we are here? So over the last 2 years, we've worked with city staff to identify a number of things that can be done to facilitate the transaction of business in the area, promote public safety and crime prevention through environmental design, maintain area aesthetics, and to summarize the work that we have done with city staff. So a number of the initiatives we're working on, we'll start with 336 Prideaux. So this is the parking lot directly behind the train station. This was a public lot until this summer. It's important to businesses in the area. It's well illuminated. Being adjacent to the RCMP, it's safe at night. And it's also on the pedestrian corridor along the tracks. It was reassigned to the RCMP, unfortunately, on the last day of our music event. And so a whole bunch of people that were at the event were ticketed, and we'd like to see it be at least temporarily reassigned to public use. We've discussed it with city staff. We'd like to see that happen for evenings and weekends while a parking study that can look at the entire area is conducted and that considers the input from all the stakeholders. We understand there's going to be a lot more development in the area, and that with densification, those places for people to park are going to be increasingly important. Next, 299, 295 Selby is the lot directly across from the Oxy. We'd like to request that as a part of that parking study, or that city staff also consider if we can make aesthetic, functional, and safety improvements to encourage utilization, review the lot design through a crime prevention through environmental design lens, and improve signs on both approaches to the lot to identify it as a public area for people to park. Another thing that we've talked to city staff about, we've talked to Jamie Rose's group. We would like to see a sidewalk constructed between down Prideaux towards 250 Prideaux, where there's a number of businesses, coffee shop, and retail. And given the densification that's going to be happening across the street with the TELUS development, we think it would be a good idea to provide a safe pedestrian connection to that. You know, potentially that could be something that maybe the pedestrian unallocated budget could be used for. I think it would be good for public safety and as the area densifies. Public art. So we are meeting with the artist, David Marticello, and some people from the arts group to look and see where the public art piece is going to go. There is the current public art location at the corner of Wesley and Fitzwilliam. There's some concerns on whether the verticality of the piece will fit under the trees there. So we're going to be talking to city staff about that. I think there's potential for the piece to go at 256 Wallace. We would like to see the development of an art corridor down Fitzwilliam, which would start at 256 Fitzwilliam. We'd have the spot on Wesley and then eventually end at the new pole that's going to be erected in adjacent to the fire hall. We think it would enrich public spaces and improve visitor experience when they're in the area. And we would also like to be included on the public art selection committees. Infrastructure maintenance, we're working with city staff on an ongoing basis on a number of initiatives when we notice things that need repair in the area or improvements. Some things we've done in the past is we see overhanging branches or areas where we're having congregations of unhoused population in bushes and stuff like that. We've had great success working with city staff on that. Some things that we're looking at for years ahead, the years ahead would be repair of the existing lighting infrastructure on Wesley Street. All the trees along there used to be illuminated over the holidays, but a number of the underground conduits have been damaged. We think those should be repaired so that the illumination can stay. We'd also like to see the installation of the illumination for the wayfinding signs on Fitzwilliam to the original design intent. We understand that that's going to be a rather invasive process to do. However, we do think it's important that if there's other work in the area, that would be considered. And we would also like the city to consider takeover of seasonal decor in the area as well as downtown as a community group that with a limited budget, buying things like decorations and things that ultimately end up being city infrastructure, city lights. We think that our funds are better spent marketing and working on events and other things like that in the city or in our area. And that's all I have. So, any questions from anybody?
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Going to 299 and 295 Selby, the parking lot.
Yes.
Do you have any ideas why it's not utilized?
The feedback that we've had is that at night there's one light at the end of it, so it's poorly illuminated. I think looking at it through the lens of driving past it, often there's blackberries overhanging. The spaces aren't clearly delineated. It's partially hard surfaced, so if the spaces were delineated, and as well I think signs on each approach identifying it as a public pay parking spot would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, through you to Mr. Rosenthal, thank you, sir, for coming this evening. Appreciate the work of the Old City Quarter and your association and the improvements that you bring to our downtown area in general and to, of course, your area in particular. I read your report. I want to maybe build on Councillor Armstrong's comment. Your first two items relate both to parking and parking lots and their availability. Would I be correct, and tell me if I'm not, would I be correct in saying that your feeling is that basically we need more availability of parking in the Old City Quarter?
Yes, I think that we do. I think that also the daytime parking is problematic on the streets. We encourage all the businesses. We maintain a list of private lots for businesses that we circulate when we sign up businesses to, but a lot of those are often full, so both monthly parking and daytime parking. I know that bylaw has been very active on some of those streets, but ultimately, as the area densifies, I think it's critical to have that infrastructure available. So like if there's city projects, like we've heard that there could potentially at some point be a new RCMP or public safety building, that those incorporate enough parking for the future needs of for their own future needs, and as well other area developments consider parking as well.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly, I feel that we need to focus part of our energies on sidewalks and active transportation options. But I also think that we have to keep in mind personally that as our city grows, more people will be visiting downtown, and a lot of those people, like it or not, still will be using automobiles, and they need a place to park, not to mention the business owners in that area. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino and then Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a question through you to Mr. Rosenthal. Thank you very much for being here. Love the area, do a lot of shopping there, so it's great. And definitely, yes, you need more parking. I can tell you that from my own personal experience. But the question that I have is, you talked about the seasonal lights. Are you saying that you do not get part of the city, like Christmas lights, things like that, or what's happening now?
Most of our lights and decorations are funded through our levy.
And who puts them up?
That depends. Last year we did have, we hire a private contractor for lighting things like lampposts. We did have 2 strings of lights that got put up in the trees on Wesley Street, but those were powered by private businesses or residences because the underground infrastructure was gone. And that was a city electrical contractor that did do those 2 trees.
Okay. And the reason I asked the question, Your Worship, is I would have just thought that it was a city, part of the city project to decorate, particularly at the high seasons. And so I'm not sure if there's an answer to that. But my final comment is, there were lots of comments that you had, and I could see Mr. Corson was writing down some things. Are you giving staff a full report of what you're looking for and hoping to achieve from tonight's delegation?
Yeah, we work directly with Mr.
Great.
Corson
Perfect.
and Mr. Rose on a variety, and as well the public safety and bylaw
Great.
people, Barry Hornby and Richard Hardy,
Yes.
as well on a lot of initiatives.
Okay.
So we do, we're in touch with them on a monthly basis probably.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Keep the good work. It's great.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. I really echo the comments around the needs for parking that you've identified, and the sidewalk pieces I think would be really helpful. So yeah, great presentation, and I just really want to compliment your Facebook and Instagram work that you do with your neighborhood association, because it makes it really easy to stay up to date with all the work that you guys are doing, and yeah, it's been great to follow, and keep it up. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Not seeing anyone else. Thank you so much tonight for the presentation. Appreciate the work of the association.
Great, thanks.
We have no committee minutes, no consent items, but we do have 2 delegations unrelated to agenda items, and the first is John Cooper, Rewarming Center Neighborhood Impacts. Mr. Cooper, please come up to the mic, introduce yourself for the record. Nice to see you.
Now I need to know when this 5 minutes starts, because this is about 4 minutes and 54 seconds. I'm John Cooper. I live at 91 Chapel Street. I'm here to speak about the impact that sudden changes with the activities permitted at St. Paul's have had on the lives of those of us living in Nanaimo City Center. 91 Chapel, 99 Chapel, 10 Chapel, number 1 Chapel, and 38 Front Street. Collectively, these properties make up 388 households within 200 meters of St. Paul's. 131 of these households have their front door within 8 meters, about 26 feet of St. Paul's. Some of you may know that I spent many years in a leadership role with the DNBIA. In that role, we were responsible for attracting people to live, work, and play in downtown Nanaimo. And our city center was identified as an important component of the ongoing revitalization goals to realize our downtown's untapped potential. My biggest takeaway from this experience in attending BIA conferences and speaking with other BIAs from all over North America is that of all the strategies and campaigns and events that a community can encourage in their downtowns, nothing is more important and more impactful than getting more households living in their downtowns. Now I ask you to think about the community effort it took from municipal economic development investments, developers, city staff, contractors, and sales and marketing firms to ultimately convince a family to decide to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars of their family's limited resources into our city's downtown. We now have 77 Chapel, a development permit currently on your books that is hoping to attract an additional 109 households to invest in downtown. 77 Chapel, for what it's worth, is also 8 meters from the St. Paul's property. That's a total of 497 households within 200 meters of St. Paul's. 240 of those households are within 8 meters of St. Paul's. Now, I live and work in 91 Chapel, 8 meters from the St. Paul's property. I have both my home and my business located there. I moved in 2 years ago. I knew exactly what the challenges of my neighborhood were: visible homelessness and drug addiction, but overall a safe place to reside. Residing there with me are my 2 daughters, 12 and 15 years old. The first year we lived there, they were not comfortable walking downtown without me, but after a year of guided adventures to Cold Front Gelato or to London Drugs for candy, they were finally comfortable enough to go out on their own, and they loved being able to walk out of our front door and go to shops. We learned to steer clear of the Royal Bank building, give Diana Krall Plaza a wide berth, and to be polite, but not to engage if confronted by anyone that looked like they were not in full control of their actions. That takes courage for young girls, and I was proud of them. Then one day this winter, we woke up, and everything had changed. At the entrance to our building, 8 meters from the door to our home where our mail is delivered, where we greet our guests when they visit us, the sidewalk was lined with people, many of the category of concern in which they did not appear to be in full control of their actions. Drug paraphernalia and open drug use was everywhere. Human feces were now a common sight on the sidewalks. Camps sprouted up as close to St. Paul's as they could in all directions. There was no escaping. There was no longer any routes in any direction that didn't have us facing a risk that did not exist previously. I don't want to relive the emotions I felt when my daughter and her friend decided to enjoy the novelty of living downtown and brave a walk to the crepe shop one Saturday morning after a sleepover. 30 meters from our front door, they had 2 seemingly high, older men catcall my 15-year-old, make a derogatory request for her phone number, and start pacing towards her. They scurried an additional 150 meters to the safety of the crepe shop. She will no longer walk outside of our home without me by her side. Now, I understand that the city of Nanaimo is not responsible for the homelessness, mental health, and drug addiction facing our city. I also recognize that you don't have the authority to eliminate this growing challenge, but you have a responsibility to make the decisions in the best interest of the citizens of Nanaimo, and I know you have the authority to make decisions that can dramatically mitigate the impact of this challenge. With that in mind, I am asking 2 things. 1, that council direct staff to immediately begin the work with service providers for siting warming centers for the upcoming year. And 2, that the report explore and include options for siting the warming center spaces out of the residentially dense area of city center. That's all.
Mr. Cooper, thank you very much. Your comments are much appreciated. Questions of the delegation? Councillor Manley.
Well, I'd like to thank you for the presentation, and I'm sorry to hear that this is what you're going through with your kids. As a kid, I would go shopping around in downtown Nanaimo, no problem. When I was 7, 8 years old, the parents would let me loose, and I despair over the state of our downtown at this stage, and so I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Councillor Brown and then Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to thank you, John, for presenting. And not everybody's familiar with our agenda and how we navigate through it. So, Your Worship, with your prerogative under new business, I would like to present a motion for council to consider as a response to the delegation. Thank you.
Councillor Perino.
Thank Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and to tell us exactly what you're going through, because it's real. And it's such a part of what we're going through. And I can tell you that as a new councillor to this table, there's so much good in the city and so much potential. And then you see this is just such an ongoing problem that we face. And our worship has talked about, you know, in the first 3 months of this year, we received close to 700 emails regarding this problem. And we're trying desperately to do different things and to look at different options. So it's helpful that you're here. But I have to tell you, it's everywhere. I ended up going back to my hometown and in early March and saw people living on the street and no idea, I think, where they were. Mm-hmm. And it's the very first time that I'd ever seen that. So it's all over, and I just respect what you have to say so much, and thank you for being here, and we will continue to fight for this. And please tell your girls they have the strength to get through this.
Thank you. Well, and if I could speak to that, when prior to the warming center going in, I mean, no one can deny the dramatic increase in the homeless population. I think at the point that the warming center opened, it undoubtedly concentrated it all to the entrance to the warming center, which, as I mentioned in my presentation, that entrance to the warming center is 26 feet from 2, soon to be 3 of the buildings that are concentrated into that very small area of city center.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Thank you so much. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much. And before I go to Councillor Brown for the motion that he suggested earlier, I just want to say I appreciate your thoughtful comments tonight. I appreciate also that unlike some folks who just identify this as a homelessness problem, it's not just about homelessness. Homelessness is the overriding connector, if you will, between a range of people, many of whom are just poor and can't afford accommodation, all the way over to those who, in my view, and I've said it more times than this city cares to hear, require secure and voluntary care to deal with some really serious mental health, addiction, brain injury, trauma issues. But your thoughtful approach is appreciated, and certainly Council has heard you on the impact in the neighborhood, and particularly your position around a residential neighborhood. With that, if there's no one else, I'll go to Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now's the appropriate time. I would move that correspondence be sent to the SPO requesting they facilitate discussions with the city, service providers, BC Housing, and any other relevant parties for the siting of warming centers in the upcoming year, and that the correspondence request that options be explored for mitigating the impacts of warming center sites on the surrounding community.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Perino. Do you wish to speak to it?
Just simply say, you know, we found the idea of the SPO to try to get off our heel and move into a more proactive position. I am an optimist at heart, but I know that this problem is going to take a very long time to get under handle, and that we will have a genuine need for warming centers in the coming year as well. So I think it's in everybody's best interest, from impacted neighborhoods and communities to those that are in genuine need of these services in a warm place, that we begin that work now in hopes that the SPO can fulfill its mandate and start to bring people together to be a little more proactive in our approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I think Council knows that I have a strong aversion to motions on the fly. But I'll tell you this, I have a stronger aversion to what is happening in our downtown and the social disorder which is affecting so many of our families and their children. And as you've pointed out very reasonably, Mr. Cooper, there are many things that are not within our control or mandate, but there are certain steps that we can look at taking to help alleviate the situation. So I will support Councillor Brown's motion. I think our systems planning organization is the route to go to look for short-term, at least, solutions to the situation that you are facing and your children are facing, which is absolutely unacceptable. So I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support this as well, and I think that now is the time to start planning for next year so that we're not in the position that we were in last year where we're up against the wall and trying to decide where warming centers are going while the snow is flying.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, I don't want to gild the lily, but I'm entirely in Councillor Thorpe's camp around motions, so to speak, as we say on the fly, somewhat unkindly, but I regard this as the reflection of, I suspect, what will be the will of council, and it's a common sense approach. I would love to think that all of these issues will be solved by the fall. It's not going to happen. And I don't say that with any joy. This is 30, 40 years of failed social policy and the opioid crisis and everything else mounted together. But you know what? Public safety and ensuring the safety of our citizens as best we can is a job that falls to us who pay for the policing. The solutions to the ongoing causes of this social disorder on our streets fall to the senior levels of government, as you respectfully recognized in your comments tonight. So I'll happily support this motion. And I see we've all inspired Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for this. I think this is the best route to be proactive, you know, to find some solutions that'll work, you know, given the situation. So it's good to get on it early. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Much appreciated, Mr. Cooper. The next is Del Thompson, re-opposition to proposed 4-story, 16-unit apartment building at 553 Larch Street. Good evening, Mr. Thompson. If you'll introduce yourself and give us your address. And
hi, everyone.
You have the floor for 5 minutes, and I'll tell you when there's a minute left.
Your Worship, councillors. My name is Del Thompson, and my husband and I, Darren Hamilton, reside at 550 Larch Street. You've already heard from me in my letter to City, Mayor, and Council on the 9th of March, as well as a petition that was signed by all 10 residents of Larch Street, with the exception of the proposed development, and submitted on the 30th of March. So I've had my say. I may have some closing comments. I've asked my neighbors to join me here today from our block, and they would like to comment. Thank you.
Yes, we just feel that the development is not a good fit for the street because there's 2 other proposed developments that one of them was canceled, but I'm sure will be revived in the near future for a 40 to 50 unit apartment building on Briarly and Larch and Estevan, and another one on Estevan and Princess Royal for a 16 unit building. This building would be this proposed development is in the middle of just a bunch of single-family homes on Larch Street. There is no parking on Larch Street as it is. We already have issues with parking. And not to mention having a 4-story building right next to my house and Dell's and Darren's house. And I think the most impacted is going to be Rick and Sue, which are right next to the proposed development. So we're concerned about that much density going in on that street. Do you have any input?
Well, we're not
If you could step forward and introduce yourself, please.
My name's Rick Diggles, and my wife Susan and I live next door at 531 Larch. We're definitely not against the construction. It's the height that is affecting us. 4 stories on that block, it doesn't seem to fit the area. I mean, when I come out my door next door, do I want to stand 5 feet away from 4-story apartment building? I've lived there for 19 years. I plan to live there for as long as I can. But with the construction of a 4-story, 16-unit building right next to us, just upsets us, and we would have to move or find somewhere else to live, and we really don't want to do that. If something was built smaller, 2 stories, 8 units, it would suit the neighborhood, and it would fit in with everything else that's in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Absolutely, we don't oppose development in the community. We understand that it needs to happen. I don't know if you've ever driven by that lot on Larch Street, but what would be really suitable would be like 4 townhomes in a row, something like that. But having the 4-story apartment building right next to a single-family home peering into your house is very intrusive and just not fitting on the street.
My name is David Beslick. I live on Larch, Departure Bay. It's my opinion that Departure Bay is one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Nanaimo, and that it's in the interest of Nanaimo to preserve it as upscale home residences rather than condo buildings, just because we have so much land that could be developed in town, and maybe we should, with plan developing, kind of preserve certain areas, nicer neighborhoods, as something that's going to be appealing long-term for visitors and tourists who will be coming to visit Nanaimo. Thank you.
So I just have a couple of closing comments, if I can make them.
Literally a minute and 3 seconds.
Okay, so the issue of a parking garage opening onto Larch Street from that property is ridiculous to us if it is approved. It is perfectly accessible from the back alley right onto Estevan for quick, easy access onto the street. I've lived in my residence for 28 years. That development will go right across the street from me. You step 4 or 5 steps down into my property, and that property is elevated on the other side of the street. So in essence, I will be looking at a 5-story building, which will tower over top of my house, deprive us all on our side, all of us, of our privacy. I've been in my house for 28 years. My next door neighbor has been over 30 years. My neighbors on the corner are 30 plus years. All of us on our side of the street are retired. We are all aging in place. We have all invested significant amounts of money into our residences to bring them up to date. And we are not prepared to take a financial hit in the event that our property values are eroded by this
If you could
development.
wrap up, please, your 5 minutes are up.
Sorry?
If you could wrap up, please, your 5
Yes.
minutes are up.
So again, I want to reiterate, we're not opposed to development. We understand the need for higher density housing. That property will be 16 apartment units.
I'm sorry, I
Okay,
asked you to
go
wrap
ahead.
up, not to repeat what you've said already, although I appreciate your concern about this.
Okay.
I do note Councillor Armstrong has a question for the delegation.
I just actually more of a comment. I just wanted to say this hasn't even come before council yet, so you're maybe a little premature. So I would be watching to see if there is a rezoning application or whatever, and that would be the time to ensure that your concerns are
Well-
heard. I do hear them, but there is a process that we followed, and the best part would be is if there's a public hearing to make sure that you register your concerns then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holm, I just have a question for you. The property's current zoning, do you know?
Believe it's R8 at the moment. So there is zoning for multifamily development on the property. Currently, there is no application before the city. The next step in a process, a development process, would be a development permit application for development of this nature. And through that process, we'd review an application for compliance with applicable bylaws and design guidelines. So it would be a development permit application would be required. Currently, there is not one before that's been submitted to the city, and whether or not it would appear before council would depend on a number of factors if an application were made. But currently, we're not reviewing an application at this time.
All right, thank you very much. That was my understanding. The next item, reports. It's liquor license application number LA 152-601 Bruce Avenue. And Mr. Holm, you're going to introduce that, not Mr. Lindsay. Now that he's a 10-year guy, doesn't figure he has to do the dirty work anymore.
I think Mr. Lindsay's still figuring out how to put on his pin. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So this is an application that is familiar to Council, as it's been before Council a couple of times already in February 27th, in the form of an information report. You can see the property outlined in red, and that's at the corner of Bruce and 5th Street, right across from the Harewood Mall there, the University Village. The application also appeared at a special council meeting on March 16th, and at that meeting there was opportunity, notification provided, an opportunity for residents to speak to the application at that time. Tonight, what's before council is a request for a resolution that would be sent to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, and that relates to the application for a proposed SIP pub at the property outlined overhead. What's proposed there is a pub of occupant capacity, liquor license capacity of 84 persons, with a patio of up to 59 persons, and indoor hours of 10 to 1 a.m. Sunday through to Monday, and outdoor, so the patio hours, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Monday is what's requested. Number of comment sheets were provided in response to the notification, 18 in total. They're attached to the report for reference. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons.
No questions, Your Worship. I'd like to move the recommendation.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was just interesting to read these, the comment sheets, and I happen to live around the corner from quite a large pub, and they play music regularly. I've never heard it in my house, never, lots of traffic, never bothered me, the noise never bothered me. I'll be voting in favor of this.
I suspect you won't be alone, Councillor Perino. Seeing no one else, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next is item 12B, development permit DP 1256-77 Chapel Street. And Mr. Holm again, please.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship. This is a development permit for property highlighted in red on the map there. It's a triangular property in the downtown between Skinner and Chapel Street. It's a DT5 zone in the downtown core. What's proposed currently is a number of buildings, 3 buildings in total, 6 stories each, and totaling 157 units proposed on that site. So significant addition to both rental and strata as proposed development, residential development within the downtown. What's proposed has been reviewed with respect to the city's applicable design guidelines, both the downtown urban design planning guidelines as well as the general design guidelines. Reviewed by the city's design advisory panel is consistent with the applicable guidelines. One variance requested, relatively minor variance. It's related to the underground parking structure along Chapel Street. The request is from a required 1.8 meters to 0 meters setback to allow for the parking structure. That would all be below street, below grade at 0 setback. There's also design-wise, does present well on the street, provides opportunity for public plazas, as well as an internal private courtyard, as well as rooftop amenity areas. Fronting Skinner Street would be a number of 2-story townhouses, so to provide a presence on Skinner Street as well. So consistent, again, with applicable design guidelines, one minor variance requested, and 157 units in 3 buildings of 6 stories in height. If you pull up attachment F, if you could please, you'll see renderings for the proposal there that'll give you an idea of the design that's consistent with adjacent development within the area and the design guidelines that are applicable. Thanks. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Just in regards to the public art, I noticed that they're going to stay with the covenant that was done. Was there any issue with them selecting the artist, or is that normal?
Yeah, through Your Worship to Councillor Armstrong, the process for the selection wasn't stipulated in the covenant as far as I'm aware, but they are proposing a fairly substantial public art investment on the side of the building you can see there. That's just representative. The actual art is undetermined at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Perino, then Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Mr. Holmes. A couple of questions, actually. The first one is under the subject property and site context. It currently contains a parkade structure which will be removed. Where will those vehicles go that are currently using that parkade right now?
Yeah, through Your Worship, I can't directly answer that. It is a private parkade,
It is.
And there are other public parkade offerings in the downtown.
Okay.
I can't speak to where those the users of that structure would be displaced to for parking, but the proposal will provide more than adequate parking for the building within 3-story underground parkade.
Okay.
There's surplus parking there
Okay.
for the building, but I can't speak to where the current tenants of the parkade would end up.
It was just my concern that, suddenly they're going to be displaced, and so I was concerned about where they would go and what the situation was for them. And my next question is, and I may have missed it in the document, but in the renderings, not that particular one, but the one that shows the proposed public art location, that is retail or commercial, I should say commercial, shops on the bottom floor. Is that correct, or are those residential?
Sorry, through your worship, those are residential.
They are residential. Okay, I thought where did I miss it? But okay, so there won't be any commercial whatsoever, other than possibly homeowner commercial.
That's correct.
Right. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Seeing no other speakers at this time, I'm prepared to move that Council issue development permit number DP 1256 for a multiple family development at 77 Chapel Street with a variation as outlined in the proposed variant section of the staff report dated 2023, April 17.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. And Councillor Thorpe, you're going to speak to it?
Briefly, Your Worship, thank you very much. As the report notes, there was a previous application for this site back in 2019, which the Council of the Day did approve. And I voted in favor of that. That development did not proceed, but I'm pleased to see that a new proposal has been put forward for this site. And personally, I like this proposal better than I did the previous one, so happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Kesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I'm very excited to see this development. This type of multifamily development right in the heart of downtown is exactly what we need. And I think the 6-story buildings are great, and as opposed to a 24-story high-rise. So I'm very looking forward to see this materialize. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I, too, am pleased to not see a tower go into this location, that this is, more in the form and scale of our downtown area. I'm a little concerned about where people are going to park, because I think that parkade was used for the courthouse, but I'm sure that people will have to figure it out some way or another. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further speakers, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Carries unanimously. Thank you. The next is bylaws. Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 4500.202. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will move that Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 4500.202, to rezone 560-604 4th Street and 361 Howard Avenue from single-dwelling residential R1 and Community Service 1 CS1 to Comprehensive Development District Zone 11 CD11 to facilitate a multifamily residential development be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Carries. The next is 13B, Growing Communities Fund Reserve Fund Bylaw 2023, number 7361. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Growing Communities Fund Reserve Fund Bylaw 2023, number 7361, to establish a Growing Communities Fund Reserve Fund be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no notices of motion this week. We do have other business, and that's Councillor Armstrong's motion, recost related to medical calls attended by Nanaimo Fire and Rescue. Councillor Armstrong. Sorry, there we are.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move the motion that the council direct staff to prepare a report outlining options to charge the province for all medical calls attended to by Nanaimo Fire and Rescue, including cost to wear and tear on fire trucks and other equipment. And if seconded, I would speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. Proceed.
Thank you. So one of my concerns is I just did random polls and I pulled the fire calls for April 8th, and 22 out of 30 calls were for medical aid. So 22 out of 30, that's more than 40%, which had been our past. Now we're surpassing 50. I also pulled the calls for today. 29 out of 43 were also for medical. So I'm concerned that, first of all, we're not getting, ambulances aren't getting the services that they need, because they do need more paramedics, and I believe that the province is relying upon our fire departments. We went through a stage, I believe, and Chief can correct me, about 3 or 4 years ago where we did, that service was pulled, and we went back to it because our citizens were hurting, and I understand that. So my purpose is twofold, in that the fact that we are now once again taking a download from the province, and also it's not helping our issues with the ambulance to get theirs needed. Second point, and I heard Chief Doyle speak about this on Wednesday, where he said our mental health impacts have really gone up significantly. And so I'd like to know, partially, when we do look at our medical calls, are they as a result of medical issues such as heart attacks, injuries, or is it most of them related to overdose or whatever? So that would be important for me in the report to know if what we're looking at, because they're, to me, two different things. And I'm also concerned about the mental stress that it's putting on our fire department, because we heard their claims are $240,000 each. So when you have a numerous, that's very expensive. So those are my rationales for it. I don't know if it will pass or not. I've been getting lots of support from around the province for people saying this needs to be done. So thank you.
Thank you very much. In order, Councillors Brown, Hemmens, Thorpe, and Prino.
Thanks, Your Worship, and I'm undecided on this, but I'm struggling with it based on, I think your last point, Councillor Armstrong, was that there is concerns around the province, around the type of incidents and the costs associated with the type of incidents that fire services are rescuing to, and I think that's evident in. And I left my notes at home on this, so unfortunately, but there's been a whole series of UBCM resolutions that have passed on this, and reviewing those indicates to me that there is concerns around some of that, and at the same time the UBCM membership is on it, so that suggests to me that there isn't a solution that we can tap into and access for what I'm reading is the intent of this motion. The second reason I'm reluctant to support this is that in 2019 we funded the EMR program to fully train the complement of the firefighters to respond to this for the need in our community, and I remember that discussion then, but ultimately council at the time decided that that was a cost and something that we viewed as worth taking on for the citizens. And so it's for those two reasons. One, that I think we've gone down this path knowing that it's something that we wanted to take on despite some of those concerns around downloading, and that this is a provincial item that has active work being done on it. I'm just wondering what we might achieve out of this report that might be better served by allowing some of those more recent motions through UBCM to play out and have those discussions with the province. And I will also highlight that it was recommendation around that EMR training from both the administration, fire administration, but also supported by the union at that time to have that more advanced training. So yeah, so I'm struggling with whether I'll support this or not, but I'm sort of leaning towards no at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmens.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm going to support this, and I think actually Councillor Brown just gave me another additional reason to support it, and that's that it has been continually at UBCM without resolution, and so this is a conversation that municipalities continue to try to have. And so I think if a more direct motion comes from this table, that might reinforce those UBCM motions. I want to flag that I have a couple of curiosities that I'd like included in the report, and Councillor Armstrong mentioned one. That is, I'd like to know the type of data we collect on our medical calls. Do we delineate that we go to overdoses versus cardiac events? And to that end, I know that the health outcomes show that having fire respond to cardiac events is absolutely proven. We know that. Early CPR is exactly what we need in those cases. I'm curious to understand the medical evidence for attending the other medical calls, and if that same evidence is there for the other medical calls. So that's just something you don't need to respond to now. I just like addressed in the report when it comes. And secondly, I understand that we have an agreement, a first responder agreement between Nanaimo Fire Rescue and Emergency Health Services, and I'd like that to be appended to the report. I'm seeing the chief shake his head no.
Chief Doyle.
Through your worship to Councillor Hemmons, Nanaimo actually doesn't have an agreement with BC EHS, and to our knowledge, we never have. So it's something that the province is interested, BC EHS is interested in doing. Recently, the BC Fire Chiefs has advised all fire departments to hold off signing the agreements until they have an opportunity to have input on that agreement. And once they have input or meaningful input on the agreement, then I suspect that agreement would come forward to us for consideration.
Do you have a timeline on that?
Through your worship, Councillor Hemmons, I have inquired as late as today, and there is no timeline on it, although I do understand it's being actively worked on.
Great, thank you. I wonder if I may, rather than our own agreement appended to that report, could we have samples from other communities who do have agreements? I understand they differ, and it's the variation that I'm curious about. So if I could have 2 samples from other communities with different agreements, that would be great for my decision making. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe, Carino, and Armstrong in that order.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm certainly in sympathy with the intent of this motion by Councillor Armstrong, but I share the concerns and I think the sentiments expressed by Councillor Brown. And as Councillor Armstrong acknowledged, this is an issue that affects communities all through the province. So I question the value of having our staff spend time preparing a report for something that has already gone through UBCM. And I don't see that our one community pushing this is going to be nearly as effective as the collective voice of a number of communities through the UBCM process. So I would rather spend our efforts in renewing the UBCM initiative on this topic and push that for action. I don't see this as an effective use of our time, and I think it's a bigger issue than that goes beyond our city. But I appreciate the intent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I also see the intent, and it's such an important motion that it in fact should be much larger. Some of the comments that Councillor Hemmons made is so right on, but this needs to be going to the UBCM. This isn't enough that we ask you to do a report. It's much bigger than that, and you have the documentation. But my concern is I don't want to have our chief doing this work when you're already so stretched for resources and time. And because I'm not entirely certain that it will achieve any of the goals that we hope it will. Whereas I think that if you have the documentation, I think we should be taking this to the UBCM again. I know Councillor Brown was saying that, and I think it needs to go there. I think it needs to go much higher than this. I'm not sure how Chief Doyle feels about that, but this is such a serious issue, and what you're facing is so... We brought it up when the Premier was here last week. I just am not sure that this motion will achieve what we're hoping. And I just wonder, through you, Your Worship, if Chief Doyle could maybe comment on that.
Oh, that's an awful question.
Sorry. Could you save the world? Just save the world. No, Chief Doyle, I'm sorry. I just if you can comment as lightly as you want.
Through your worship, Councillor Perino, it's a very complex issue, as
Yes.
the questions, the discussions already illuminated. To the issue at hand, the very basic issue, we certainly have a very active dashboard of collecting our stats. Every stat's collected and broken down into different types of overdoses, falls, Oh, sorry, not into the mic.
Yes.
So yes, we have that data readily available. In fact, I could get it right now for you. It's that accessible. To the greater issue is that I tend to agree that this is a provincial issue, that other departments have sought this, or have looked at this path and have had, from what I've been advised, not much success. So, but I would be happy to write a report for you on this issue and give you all the data and answer any questions you have. We have it readily available.
So just as a final comment, knowing that it's not a difficult report for you to write, I will be voting in favor, but I think we need to take it a step further. Once we get the information, then we have to put a resolution forward, and we can do that because we can put UBCM resolutions forward by, I think, June the 30th. So we can do that, and I think we need to do it again. And you know what? We get up and speak to it. We have nothing to lose and so much more to gain, so it's worth a try. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, then Councillor Gesselbrock, and Councillor...
I can defer to Councillor Gesselbrock because he hasn't spoken, and Manley, I'll go last. So I can do my rebuttal.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Your Worship. I mean, everybody that spoke, his perspective really makes sense on this, and it's sort of one of those things that it is a complex issue, and staff writing a report on it to give to us probably is not going to accomplish a whole bunch. However, is it pretty easy to get the data on how much it costs for the calls that were medical, and to be able to give council 2022 we spent this much on medical calls for naloxone or reviving somebody in the downtown?
If I can answer that, I think the data will be what the data will be. If we don't have the data, the chief can't invent it. If we've got the data, he'll give it to us.
I'm just curious if we have it.
Through Your Worship, the data is there in terms of how the calls break down. In terms of the entire outcome, I think that would be hard to give you an accurate number on that. And if you're asking, through Your Worship, Councillor Gesselbrock, if you're asking in terms of adding in naloxone costs and every minute of the firefighter that a firefighter's attending to that call, I think that would be a significant report to generate, to extrapolate that far out. And I'm not sure where we would stop with the how far down you'd like to go with that. And if it was firefighter time, supplies, fuel, maintenance, training. I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thanks for that. I guess my point is that there's a significant amount of costs that goes into providing this service. This is a response to a health crisis, which ultimately is within the jurisdiction and responsibility of the provincial government to address. And as a municipality, we're having to deal with it downstream. So fire response is just one little part of this. There's the public, the cleaning that goes on for a downtown, that sort of thing. What we put into shelters that organize around all these different elements, health and housing. And having that number, or even a little sliver of that number with just the fire, is pretty important information to be able to put in a letter and be like, look, this is one cost that we could just be spending it upstream, and it's going to make a lot more of a difference than having to do it in this very reactive way. What's the best advocacy approach to do this? If it's if it's worth the time to go and do the number crunching so that we can write a letter with some very hard facts on it, I don't know, but I do appreciate the intent of this, and I'm 6 and 1 half a dozen on whether to support this motion or not. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manley, then Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Brown again.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And don't forget Councillor Armstrong. I haven't said anything yet either. I mean, everybody wants to say something, so.
Oh boy, I can't wait for that. I am really interested in the data, in the raw data. I think that doing a calculation of how much naloxone you use and everything else, I think that's a waste of time. Just looking at the figures, we could round it up and say it's costing us millions of dollars. So I've heard that we don't have enough paramedics to help deal with this crisis that we're seeing on the street. And that, I would just like to get some comment from Chief Doyle about what is the situation in terms of paramedic response, and should we, what should we be doing as a council in terms of advocating on behalf of the fire department to get more paramedics here?
Certainly, through your worship, Councillor Manley. So I think the overarching question is the paramedics in recruitment. I think we've heard from the RCMP in terms of recruitment. We've heard numbers as far as I think it's at depot 10,000 down to 1,800 or in that range. And I suspect I don't have as accurate data for BCAS, but I do know that they have a recruitment campaign on. But I suspect they're like all emergency services, with fire being somewhat of the exception, that they're probably having a more difficult time filling roles as fastly as they need their resources as well. I think it speaks to the complexity of the whole public safety in terms of medical incidents from patient contact through the system, through the outcome, how stressed it is from the medical system all the way down to the firefighters and paramedics on the front end. I mean, just to give you a little bit of history, that we've been responding to medical incidents for over 3 decades now. So this isn't a new, it's something that we've participated in as a local government. It's not something that the province compels us to do. We are actually we've participated freely in that system, and we've been doing it for over 3 decades. And we, as evidence in the Cameron report that was authored in 2006, I believe it was. I can get that for you, but I believe it's in 2006. Illustrates how important that all the fire department, paramedics, and everyone down the line plays in it. So this is, I don't know that there's a magic bullet in terms of that if we just could recruit. We're never going to be able to recruit enough of all of those services to really keep up with it. So fire department does play a critical role in that system. We respond with the paramedics to support the system, to administer critical interventions in in the most needy patients. And that does reflect sometimes. I've had questions, why do we have paramedics and firefighters responding in the numbers we do? Because if you just spend a small observation team, then they can't administer critical interventions timely enough. So we've played an important role for over 3 decades in the pre-hospital care system.
Well, I'm inclined to support this if there was an amendment on it so that the fire department is not calculating a whole bunch of costs to do this. I'd like to get some raw data. I'd like to find out what other departments are doing, and as Councillor Hammond has outlined, but I think calculating costs and trying to come up with an accurate cost of what this is onerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Brown, then Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you,
and
Your
Councillor
Worship.
Armstrong to finish.
I'll be brief. I was certainly hesitant on this, and I explained why. I've decided that I will support the motion, and I appreciate the comments and questions asked by Councillor Perino a few minutes ago. On the assurance that this report will not be too onerous for the chief or his staff, I think it would be very valuable to have some basic facts that we could, as Councillor Perino said, use to move this forward again at the provincial level through UBCM. So it's ammunition for us to take forward at that venue. So I will support it because of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. I do appreciate everybody expressing their views and asking the questions, and Chief Doyle for answering them. Further discussion has convinced me I will not be supporting this motion as much as I appreciate the sentiment, because I don't think our curiosity warrants people doing work. I also don't think the province doesn't understand that there is a lot of cost being borne by municipalities, whether we're talking fire, bylaw, the community, businesses. Yes, these things, they can't be calculated, and everybody knows the problem. So there's been 3 decades of this, and there's been, my research, at least 2 decades worth of motions through UBCM asking for resolution. It's just, we attended a conference this weekend where there was countless financial asks on the province. So it's just, you know, I could go on. It's just, I think we're simply asking something out of our curiosity and our belief that it might add another drop into a bucket and result in some change. It just simply won't. So we have the data. I'm sure you do good things with it. I don't need to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Yeah, thank you. A question for the chief regarding, there's a collaboration happening already between BC Fire Chiefs and BC Ambulance Service, and they're working on some type of contractual agreement. So I'm just wondering, are we jumping the gun a little bit with this motion, with more information potentially coming?
Through your worship, Councillor Eastmere, there is a effort between BCEHS and the BC Fire Chiefs to get to a collaboration agreement. I don't know that that would address Councillor Armstrong's concern about funding. It's simply a framework that we participate in, a codified framework that we would agree to participate in, as opposed to right now in some circumstance, or a lot of our circumstance, where we don't have an agreement with them. So,
okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Hope that helps.
I'll be very quick. A couple of years ago, a cranky old mayor from Williams Lake, I believe, was it Walt Cobb, who complained about the catch and release program. I'm not saying that I agree with the simplicity of that phrase in describing how our criminal justice system functions, but we had an announcement made in the lawns of our local courthouse that sort of followed on the tail end of that kind of, I won't call it a publicity stunt, but the drawing of attention to an issue that's important. We are frequently asked about the cost and why the ambulance is there and why the fire truck is there, et cetera, et cetera. It's a fairly straightforward motion. Direct staff prepare a report outlining options to charge the province for all medical calls. I'd like to have the information. I think it would be useful. And if nothing else, then it will draw attention to an issue. Because ultimately you can argue that as part of the healthcare system, this is a downloading. So I'm going to support Councillor Armstrong's motion. I appreciate the reservations that have been expressed, but I think it's worthwhile taking a shot at it. Councillor Armstrong, you get the last word,
Thank you.
I hope.
Yeah, no, yeah. One of the big issues, and in regards to the EMR program, ambulance or the fire department will still go to accidents because we also pay for the fire or the police, so it's really not taken out of our pocket. My concern is we did receive letters, and I don't know if some of the council members would not have been here, from EHS asking us not to send the fire to these calls because it was really hurting them in their negotiations, and also for getting extra bodies. I don't know if people remember that. That came forward. So that's a concern I have. We don't have to go to these calls. So what happens if we decide we're not going to go to these calls? Pardon? That's right. But I mean, but that's why we've done it, right? But I mean, so like we are taking on additional responsibilities and it's costing this city a lot of money. And what happens if there's a major fire while our truck is sitting out at a health call because they can't leave? Is that correct? You can't leave once you're at the call, or there's legal implications?
Through your worship to Councillor Armstrong, yes. Once we've made patient contact, we can't break patient contact. We are required to stay there. However, it's also why we have some resiliency built into our system, because just not for medical calls. Once we're helping someone at a rope call, a hazmat call, a water rescue call, we're really, we need to be there we can't just leave. So it's kind of why there's resiliency in the system with extra fire halls.
And then my point is, as Councillor Brown said, this has been at the UBCM for 20 years with nothing happening, nothing. And I mean, and I'm just not content with it. It doesn't mean the chief may come back and it may be say, do nothing. There may be it's just asking for a report is what are our options, and it could be that nothing, or we could determine that, has anybody ever billed them yet? We don't know that. So it's just actually just asking for a report, and I'm gonna sum it up because I see the mayor going like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor and those contrary? Councillor Brown, motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone, for the spirited debate. The next item is question period.
Your Worship, Earlier in the agenda, there was committee minutes, but just for receipt. I believe you said there weren't any, but they were just there for receipt. There's no motion required, but I just wanted it kind of
Sorry,
on the record.
did I say there were no committee minutes for receipt?
I
thought
that
I
is-
said they're for receipt only, but could be wrong.
I'm not sure. My staff let me know that
But
we skipped by
There's no
that.
question, we had committee minutes and we are receiving them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, we've got Colin Middleton, motion by Armstrong. Item 15, Mr. Middleton, good evening. Introduce yourself for the record, please.
Hello, yep, my name is Colin Middleton, president of the Nanaimo Area Public Safety Association. I wasn't, I was kind of surprised to hear that this motion was coming forward, but then I was intrigued as soon as I heard about it and wanted to follow up. As you may know, when we first introduced our association back in November, I outlined that our primary advocacy position was challenging the language of the Ministerial Order M488, which is related to the opioid crisis. And we argued that it creates a legal no man's land for the use and trafficking of highly addictive drugs. And we now know that the province is willfully turning a blind eye to diversion and indirectly even encouraging it under the guise of safe supply of publicly supplied addictive drugs. The proceeds from this diversion is being used to purchase street drugs that are both toxic as well as extremely addictive. There's growing evidence to suggest that M488, as written, there is a question here.
There is a question coming.
Yep. As written, is preventing the de-escalation of the opioid crisis. And despite our efforts and advocacy to bring this to the attention of the province, there appears to be a deliberate reluctance to review it. So my question is related to what the actual mechanism or the reason why the city might feel that the costs associated with overdose calls should be paid for by the province, and how would the city actually be able to collect on it?
Councillor Armstrong is going to answer it.
That's the reason for the report, to give us those options. Because for me, the concern is, I know Chief said that we've been doing this for many years, but I can guarantee you 50 or 60% of the calls years ago weren't medical calls. And I have pretty confident in saying that. Like even last year, I think our numbers were up to 40%, I believe Chief said. And this year, just on the ones that I've looked at, it's over 50%. So that's one of the reasons. And my other big reason is we keep getting downloaded. The downloads from the province onto city, and we only, and this is my famous line, we only collect 8% of the taxes, right, for municipal. And so we're taking millions, and I would say it's millions by the time you look at, 50% means 50% of the wear and tear in your truck is coming from medical calls, not fire calls. So it's millions, as Councillor Manley said, of taxpayer dollars going to something that should come from the bigger pot. That's just my opinion, and that's why I asked for the report.
Thank you. And Councillor Perino?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Oh, I'm just going to yell it out. Question through you. No, honestly, not so much a question, but I agree with Councillor Armstrong that we need to know as much as we can to make it as public as we can. Because just like you, when you do your advocacy, you let the entire city know what's going on, right? It's an important piece and it works. And if we can inform the public what our fire department is doing, because the truth is, when they're at a medical call, they may not be able to, at the same time, attend all the fire calls, and they are outstanding. They do everything they can, but they can't leave a patient in need, thank goodness. So, the more we see these calls coming, the harder it gets to do the work that they're doing, and the more pressure we put on them emotionally.
So, I understand. And so I guess to the question, I mean, understanding that, the policy environment at the provincial level that has created this situation where the city is unduly burdened by these overdose-related calls. This is what this is really about.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm just going to say this. I was so appreciative of Mr. Middleton coming and speaking at the Island Health board meeting that was open to the public, and I appreciate the work you do, because we have to keep on saying exactly what you've just said continually until we get some resolutions that work in our favor. And that's why we're talking about UBCM, because in September, we're going to hopefully bring yet another resolution to say this is not acceptable treatment for our fire department. So keep going, keep going. We're behind you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Worship.
thank you, thank you.
I have to stop.
I was just about to say, this is not
I know.
dialogue period, this is
I know.
question period, but much appreciated. Do you have another question, Mr. Middleton?
That's it.
You do?
Good job.
You don't. Thank you very much. Appreciate the advocacy. Mr. Milligan, on item 11A, you just introduce yourself for the record, please.
Hey there, my name's Bruce Milligan. I own Cellpro Repair Solutions at 70 Church Street. Just wondering, is there, just wanted to talk about item 11A in regards to the warming centers. Is there plans for a cooling center by any chance within that area? And I was wondering if anyone knows anything.
Sorry, I couldn't quite catch that.
A cooling center.
Cooling center, yeah. Is there a cooling center going in where, I guess it's St. Paul's or St. Peter's Church?
Mr. Lindsay.
At this point, Your Worship, we're having discussions with providers throughout the community about potential locations for cooling centers, but yes, we often rely on churches as potential locations, but nothing confirmed at this point.
And public buildings as well.
Correct.
If we're facing that kind of a crisis, cooling centers, I mean, you're looking at a substantial variety of locations, including public buildings, which would otherwise be used for other purposes. And Councillor Manley, or Councillor Perino, sorry.
No, it just didn't get turned off.
Councillor Manley.
I was just going to say, that discussion hasn't started yet among service providers, but it is starting, and it's time that it started so that we can plan properly and take into consideration the neighborhoods that are affected by these cooling and warming centers.
Sorry, can you say that again? I'm just having a tough time hearing.
Oh, I'm just saying that the planning hasn't begun yet.
Okay.
There's the service providers have received notice that planning will begin, and now is the time really to do it, so that these decisions aren't made in a rush at the last minute when the services are really needed. Planning needs to happen well in advance, and that way the neighborhoods can be taken into consideration properly. So thank you for your question, and yeah.
Sure. I was also just wondering if Councillor Brown's motion, if we can amend maybe that motion of warming centers to include the definition of cooling centers as well, or to put cooling centers in there, if that makes sense, if I understood it properly. Cool, great.
Ms. Gurry.
That's a legislative.
Interesting question. Well done, Mr. Milligan.
Great, thank you.
Your Worship, the motion has been put on the floor. It could be reconsidered and possibly then amended, but I think that it's fair to say with the warming and cooling being in the same department, in the same clientele, and same systems looked at, I'm sure that would form part of the report, and it wouldn't be necessary to necessarily amend it. I think it could be added, or I think it would be something that the SPO would be working on with staff regardless of a motion.
I think it's probably a fair comment. Mr. Milligan, thank you for raising the issue. And I say that because, candidly, the warming centers are used by people who are by and large homeless. Cooling centers, depending on the breadth, depth, and extent of it, may well be used by, well, frankly, everyone in this room.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
We had a lot of seniors using cooling centers.
I think the point, though, is well taken, and the systems planning organization would have a responsibility, in my view, given we're putting $500,000 a year into it, to provide that kind of commentary. So thank you. All right. Seconded, Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you to everyone, and we hope Mr. Rudolph enjoys the rest of his birthday day.
Yeah, go party. What did you need in the mayor's report?